WCLN 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by JW Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. JW Simmons here. The name of the show is We Should Know. I want to thank you for being with us today. We're talking with Dr. Michael Walden, Professor Emeritus, North Carolina State University. Dr. Walden, thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
It's interesting when I looked at looking at ideas for your introduction. You've got so many personalities here. You're an author, an educator, media personality. You've been on numerous radio shows throughout the state. You're somewhat of a regular on one of the network TV shows in the area, Channel 5 and WRAL. You're called on constantly by folks to help clarify economic issues. As professor of economics at North Carolina State since 1978, 43 years in teaching. I find it interesting also, you kind of capstoned your career with the Reynolds Distinguished Professor Award. That's tremendous just looking at that. And you specialize in economics and understandable and relatable and interesting. And that's what I want to do today is take that last phrase and see if we can make this relatable, understanding, and interesting, because a lot of folks, when you hear economics, they think it's all about the numbers.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the program. And you didn't mention the personalities I have that my wife claims, but we won't get into that. Economics is not that hard to understand. I always tell people who say, I might see someone who took an economics course, I might see them in the grocery store or the Y where I go to work out. And they'll say, oh, I took economics. Gosh, it was so hard. I say, the subject matter is not hard. If it was hard for you to understand, it's because you didn't have a good instructor. Because economics is really common sense. And I've been doing this now if you include my career on the faculty and include the couple of years I've been retired, I'm pushing 50 years of trying to be an educator of economics. And my philosophy has always been, I need to explain everything in ways that people can understand. Now, if I'm talking to another economist, I can get into the jargon. But I like talking to everyday people because economics is so important to everyone's life. You don't have to be a business person. Everyone's life, I mean, figuring out where to spend your money, family budget, that's economics. Economics is about making decisions about resources. And usually the resource we think about is money, but it's also time. So thank you for that compliment, but that's something I've strived to do over my career.
One of the things I've interested too in a number of books, you've written a number of books, thousands of periodicals and articles. I mean, it's amazing when I look at that track record. But I was thinking about the book, and this is something that I've talked to you on Zoom about because you've been on the show on Zoom, but it's just fascinated me. It's a book called Disunion. And it literally, the kind of dialogue in the book is about the country and where it is, and it's found itself at this place that the states are becoming independent again, and it's this huge world of chaos, which typically someone would say, well, that's a fiction book. But then I look at it and I look where we are today, and with the tribalization that's going on, and with the separation of people, and with a sense of, I guess, social anger, is it more of a book of prophecy?
I don't know that I thought of it that way. I mean, the way I've done other fiction books too, and of course that's not how I've made my living. But I enjoy writing, and sometimes I've inspired. Writing fiction is much different than writing nonfiction. I can sit down and write a nonfiction book, a book about economics, and it's just a matter of scheduling what I'm going to write. With fiction, you have to be inspired.
That's right.
I found, and then you're thinking about it all the time. So when I'm into writing a fiction book, I always have a notepad right on my nightstand, because I might wake up in the middle of the night and have a good idea, and you have to get at it constantly. No, that book was inspired by probably a dark view of where we could go with the current schisms, political schisms in the country. And it, as you recall, there are three main characters, each different. They come together at some point, but they're dealing with the economic situation. One is trying to start out on a new career. The other is a politician who is dealing with some issues in her state. The third is a newly elected U.S. senator. So, yeah, I mean, I think the idea came from the headlines, and I think it does have a happy ending. I always like happy endings, but hopefully it makes people think, and I thank you for the compliment.
The other book which that I've looked at and I found interesting was a book that was more specific to the moment as well. It's called Relaunch.
Yes.
Renewing Families and Reviving the American Dream in the New Independent Lifestyle.
Right. That is a book that was inspired by the pandemic and all the changes that have still occurring due to the pandemic, and thinking about how could these changes be harnessed to help individual families. And in particular, I was always thinking about rural North Carolina, which has sort of not participated in the fast growth of the metropolitan areas. So this is a book that looks at, for example, the positive impacts that remote working could have in terms of where families could live. They could live in a nice, great county like Sampson, where you've got elbow room, you've got much lower priced housing than the Triangle, yet maybe still be employed by someone in the Triangle. It looks at maybe down the road we could be getting a lot of our packages from drones. Probably 4 times a week I get a book from Amazon, and they're wonderful people that deliver them, but they back up our driveway and inevitably they get over into my wife's flower gardens. She said, "Oh gosh, it's another Amazon truck coming." Those might be dropped out of the air. I talk about telemedicine, which is controversial, but actually my wife used that during the pandemic when we couldn't get in physically to see our doctor, and it worked very well.
It's really a thing now.
It is a thing now. So this is a book, it's not fiction, but it's sort of presenting what the world could be like if these forces are harnessed in a way that could improve some people's lives. Everyone's not cut out to do Zoom remote work. I want to emphasize that. But I think the possibility exists. It's now about 30% of the workforce. It was only 10% pre-pandemic. So I think it's here to stay. And for some workers and for some businesses, it might work out beautifully. And that opens up a whole host of other possibilities regarding where you live.
Absolutely. And I think the thing that interested me in that book as well is that it seemed to have some sense of current timeable stuff. It was like when you would read something, you look at it and you go, wait a minute, that's relevant right now. It's not it's not something that's aged, you know. Right. It's not something that has been brought to some kind of end. One other book I wanted to talk about that you've written is called North Carolina in the Connected Age, Challenges and Opportunities, which that's interesting. And again, I'm just touching on some that kind of interested me. Was the other one was like North Carolina in this Connected Age 2050. Which was kind of a forward look.
Yeah, those are 2 books I wrote.
And they're very popular, by the way.
A couple of years ago, UNC Press kindly published them. The first one, North Carolina Connected Age, is a book about looking how we changed from the past. For example, when I came to North Carolina in the 70s, tobacco, textiles, furniture were still dominant. Today, they are a shadow of their former selves, and we're now dominated by things like technology, pharmaceuticals, food processing, finance. So it's a book about how did that happen and how did the North Carolina economy transform. We could have gone the other way and sunk, but I think the great thing about North Carolina, it adapted, and it has adapted. And then the second book, North Carolina Beyond the Connected Age, North Carolina 2050, looks ahead. Where might the state happen? And there are chapters in there about rural, about urban, about jobs, about public policy, et cetera. So yeah, those are two books, obviously, I would recommend for someone who's interested, particularly in the economy of North Carolina, how we got to where we are now and where we might be going.
I find it, the more I look at your background, this is probably, I want to point it out as kind of an observation question. But there's a lot of discussion at the time that we're doing this show, and it builds around something we've talked about before, and I want to kind of introduce it now, and when we take a break we can kind of come back to it. But it's on a lot of folks' mind, and this is the whole idea of the national debt. And we're looking at $31+ trillion. News media and other sources have pushed this out, and there seems to be a bit of a fright in the air is the idea, is there even possible that we could default on the national debt? And then we look at the conflicts and lack of agreement in Congress, and it makes you wonder, is that a pathway? Obviously, it's not a good pathway. But what's your thoughts on the national debt?
Well, there are a lot of issues in what that topic. We've been down this path before. It wasn't always this way, but I forget when it was that Congress said, okay, look, when we get to a certain point of the debt, we're going to have to jointly vote on whether to raise it, and of course the president has to approve. And so we eventually bump up against that. I think the last time we were in this situation was 2011. And I think the same scenario is going to prevail. I think right now we're at the national debt, but the Treasury Department can still finagle things, and the best estimates are we can keep going until about June. Mm-hmm. So June is sort of the off the cliff date. I think right now, JW, we're in the situation where all sides are sort of pontificating, playing to their bases. Everyone's saying we want this or we're not going to negotiate. I think that'll change when we get to the deadline. One observation I've made over the years of politicians is they don't want to make hard decisions, because a hard decision means you probably are going to alienate some people, and politicians don't. But when they're best making hard decisions and their back's up against the wall. So my prediction is that we're going to go through several months of back and forth. When we get to sometime in June, I think the real negotiations will happen. No one wants to default on the national debt, because that would mean that every interest rate probably that's charged to anyone in the U.S. is going to go up, including on national debt.
We're going to take a break. We're going to come back, and I want to kind of transition from that to talking to folks about their pocketbook mm-hmm. and how the economy may or may not affect their pocketbook in a positive way, and also their journey. They may be getting close to retirement. They may be thinking, do I need to put more in a retirement fund? How do I need to adjust my reality to this new world of economics that we're looking at? Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment. We look forward to seeing you on the next from the next break here. And we're talking with Dr. Michael Walden, an interesting person that's got an unbelievable background in economics in North Carolina, and is able to kind of break that down where we can all understand it and understand our role in this.
You're out for an evening on the town. Finally a chance to relax and forget that you left your front door completely unlocked. Fortunately, you just installed a security system from Star Communications. With just your cell phone, you can check on your house, lock it down, light it up, and get back to relaxing.
You forgot to put Buster in his crate.
Unfortunately, we can't help with that. Security and automation from Star Communications. Call today to find out more.
Most aging adults want to stay in their homes as long as possible. And as your loved ones get older, you want to support them, even when you can't be there. Star is proud to offer Star Alert. This new system is now mobile and has GPS compatibility, so your loved ones can live their lives and you can have peace of mind, knowing they can get the help they need with just the simple push of a button. The new Star Alert also offers automatic fall detection, so help will be alerted even if they can't press the button. Call and ask about Star Alert today.
Welcome back. We Should Know's on there. JW Simmons, your host here. We're talking with Dr. Michael Walden, Professor Emeritus, North Carolina State University, 43 years, is that correct? Mm-hmm. Teaching economics at North Carolina State University. I want to kind of get into this segment a bit, something I looked at that was published a while back, and this was a comment that you made, and I think it's interesting because in 2023 everybody's looking at some predictability. You know, what can we hold to? What seems a conscious reality? And the comment was, for several months in 2023 we may be confronted with fast rising prices and reductions in our income and jobs. Mm-hmm. I found that to not necessarily be shocking, but to kind of be an extension of where a lot of people feels they are now.
Yeah. Here's the deal in 2023. We have two challenges. One is still inflation. It's too high. It has abated a little bit. With the December number year over year was 6.5%. That's down from the June number of 9.1. So it's abated a little bit. But it was under 2% pre-pandemic, and that's what people got used to for most of the 21st century. And the Federal Reserve knows that. So they're still fighting inflation. The problem is that the typical way to fight inflation is to slow the economy down, get people to spend less. Businesses will hire less, sort of take the pressure off of buying, because right now we've had a situation where people are trying to buy too much and the supply is not there. Now the supply is getting better, the supply chain's better, but that was really the core reason for the uptick in inflation. So the Federal Reserve is raising interest rates. They're going to raise them more. They're trying to cool the economy down. There's signs the economy is cooling down. The trick for them is to thread the needle exactly to where we cool the economy down, but we don't cause a recession, and we get inflation lower. Once we get inflation lower, they can lower interest rates, and we can get back to normal. That's a hard task to accomplish. It's called a soft landing in the economics lingo. The more likely result is we do have some recession. And what I meant by that comment, we could see a recession even while the inflation rate is getting better. It's still high. So maybe by the end of the year, we have 5% inflation, which is still much more than we want, but we've got a recession. So that's what I meant by that comment. And this is why 2023 is going to be very, very challenging.
When we look at it, and I'm still on this same article. This was January 17 that you wrote this. I think it's current, and it says it divided recommendations into two significant parts of our financial lives: income and spending. So is it? And you mentioned this earlier off camera. I heard you say that economics is really simple. There's often two parts to it. So income and spending sounds simple, but at the same time, it's kind of complicated when people start looking at supply chain and all these other issues we've been facing.
Well, I think that comment had to do with, if I remember right, I was talking about what families. If families are faced with this situation, this dire situation where prices are still rising faster than we want, but we've got businesses starting to cut people and maybe they'll lose their jobs. People want to look at their economic situation. I would tell them, if they think they're vulnerable, just do it now. And look at, all right, what if I had my job totally cut or I had my hours back? Is there any way I can add some income? Can I replace that income? And today with the internet and people being able to actually work using the internet, there are some options there. So look at options. If you say your salary's, just to use an example, cut in half, could you make up some of that by taking on an additional job? Of course you don't want to, but you have your income situation to worry about. On the other side, if you're faced with cutbacks in income, of course, is to try to cut back spending. And before you do that, you have to do something that I don't know anyone who likes to do, and that is a family budget. It's tedious, it's boring. You got to track what you buy, but I think it's essential if you're worried about your economic future. And a family budget just simply means cataloging where you spend your money, on what do you spend your money. And the benefit of that is you can then look at where you spend your money and you prioritize. You can put your essentials at the top and your non-essentials at the bottom. And you may be surprised. I think the average family would be surprised now that how much money they spend on eating out. Do you know that the average meal, if you go out to eat a meal and you cook that same meal in your home, if you buy that meal out and eat in a restaurant, it'd be 4 times more expensive, 4 times more. So that's the first thing I tell people. If your budget is being really clobbered by the economic situation and you got to cut back spending, that's probably the first thing. You may not like bringing things home and comparing them at home, but in some sense, you're substituting your time for money, and you still have the time, but you got less money.
That dynamic is not only workable, but when you look back, and you've been doing these things for a long time, when you look back at the 70s and 80s and years where families literally not only sat down and did that, but quite honestly, a lot of folks had 2 or 3 jobs. And they would work, if they had a government job or if they had a job at a business, they would also work another job on the weekends. That was critically important. I recall seeing hundreds of people just in my little community that was doing that.
Actually, JW, the data indicate that in North Carolina especially, people are beginning to take on second jobs. We can read that in the data. I think the problem is, and I don't want to bash these folks, but if you look at the so-called Z generation, that's people roughly born since 2000, they were too young to remember the subprime recession. The COVID recession came, they remember that, but there was a lot of federal help. People people really didn't suffer economically during the COVID recession. I mean, some did. I don't want to minimize it. But the federal government poured a lot of money into the economy trying to help people survive. So there are a lot of folks who just haven't experienced a bona fide recession. I mean, other than the COVID, that wasn't bona fide, that was different, of what happens. And recessions are actually normal. They're normal all over the world. This is not just in our economy. Europe, Russia, China, it doesn't matter. The economy goes through lulls. Traditionally in our country, it was sparked by high inflation, and high inflation resulted because the economy got too exuberant. And then you had to sort of take the steam out. And again, the Federal Reserve tries to do that by not causing a recession, but often they can't. So I think a lot of folks have not used or thought about those well-worn solutions to how do you live when you have less means to live on. And I think, second job's one way, but another way is spending more of your time instead of spending more your money.
Is there a willingness in the labor market now? You hear folks say, well, we need more people. We need more folks to work. I talk to farmers regularly because obviously that's where I live. I talk with farmers and I hear labor is critically important. I've also heard farmers say many times, if it were not for Latino, Mexican workers, we literally would have to shut the farm down. What is that saying? Is it saying to us that we need more people that live here to maybe look at farm labor jobs, or that if they're not willing, then do we need to do more to enhance folks coming into the country to work? That's a big dialogue, and I know a big chunk to talk about, but just give us your perspective.
Well, I think the labor problems on the farm are not new. And you're right, sometimes they're solved by bringing folks in from other countries who are willing to do that work. In fact, I think in California, traditionally, maybe even North Carolina, there was actually a federal program for temporary labor to come in. And I think that's a sign of prosperity in the country, because farm work is extremely hard. My father grew up on a farm and worked on a farm. My grandfather had a farm. I never experienced that, but my father would tell me stories of you're up at 4:30 and you got your chores to do. Exactly. And when he wasn't in school, he was working on a farm. It's very, very hard work. And I guess fortunately we've developed an economy where we have jobs that people can take that don't require that physicality. Now, it may require a lot of mental application. There may be stress, et cetera. But farming is essential. I mean, we don't have farmers, we don't eat. And one way that farmers in North Carolina, as well as the country, have adapted is they've used more technology. The labor component of farming today is much lower than it was 50 years ago and certainly 100 years ago. But you're right, foreign labor is certainly one of the short-term solutions.
Should we look at all the industries and kind of reflect a bit? Because when I look at the hospitality industry, I see a lot of foreign labor in the hospitality industry. And so the question is these particular jobs that are just not interesting to other people, or is the jobs just full? Or do we have people that say, well, I just don't particularly want to do that now and I'd rather for somebody else to do it?
Well, I think it's a matter of, I worked in restaurant industry when I started, a fast food restaurant. Again, extremely hard work. I can remember one of the tasks, this was in the 60s, one of the tasks I was given was to go outside every night and take the garbage cans, this was 4 garbage cans were lined, and scrub them. Throw in some bleach, some cleaner, and scrub to make them clean. So that's hard work. And I think, again, I'd say for the problem of restaurant people finding people to work is there are other jobs that pay better and are less physically demanding, and so people naturally have gravitated to them. What's going to probably happen in the restaurant industry is they're going to look very hard at trying to get technology to take the places of workers. The presentation I gave here in Sampson County recently, I talked about the experimental restaurant McDonald's opened, I think it was in Fort Worth, Texas, and what they call an all-digital restaurant. It's all run by computer, et cetera, and machines. There are a couple people in there that are around to make it if a switch goes off or something, but you don't see you don't interact with a person in getting your McDonald's hamburger. That may be the future for some restaurants, unless people are willing to pay more for meals out that they eat out, because that's the only way restaurants, I think, are going to be able to cope in terms of attracting labor. They've already done that. The restaurant industry over the last 2 years has increased wages in restaurants 17%. And they're not going to, if they can't get people that way, they're probably going to have to go to technology.
We're going to take a break, but when we come back, I want to talk a bit about what the COVID era has done and its impact on not only our expectations, but things that we're doing now that prior to COVID, we probably wouldn't even considered. Some of those technological things and how that's changed the marketplace itself. And also talk about the idea, how do you know if it's time that maybe I tried a new business? Is 2023 the time to start a business, or is it too complex right now? So let's touch on that when we come back. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment. We're talking with Dr. Michael Walden. We look forward to seeing you in just a moment. Call a friend. This is interesting stuff that may help you.
To get the most out of your electronic devices, you need a strong internet connection and a protected home Wi-Fi network. You need high-speed internet from Star. Star has the fastest, most affordable high-speed internet service available for all your devices. We have no long-term contracts or high-pressure sales. Our service speaks for itself, and switching is hassle-free. We take care of everything with free installation from a local company. High-speed internet from Star. Internet at the speed of light.
Honey, do we pay our bill?
What bill?
The Star Communications bill.
No worries, honey. With Star's paperless billing and automatic draft system, I get a notification sent right to my phone. There's no need to be bothered with those paper statements, and our bill is paid on time every month.
Well, that's easy and convenient.
It sure is, honey.
Honey?
Yes, dear.
The baby.
Oh, right.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking today with Professor Emeritus Michael Walden. The name of the show is We Should Know. I'm JW Simmons, your host. Mike, thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We were chatting as we went to break, and on break, there seems to be a lot of expectations that were developed during COVID. Everything from, as you've been on hundreds of times with media throughout the state, with Zoom and various other things. And then there's this work ethic now. It's called work from home. Where are we, and what do you think economically is going to be the future for us post-COVID versus what we've learned from COVID? I guess what I'm saying is, it seems to me that we've learned a lot of things that we can do from home. So that expectation is there. Do you think there's going to be more folks that are saying, well, let's do this meeting on Zoom. Let's don't necessarily get together?
Well, first of all, recessions and periods of medical challenge. Of course, we haven't gone through anything like COVID except for the Spanish flu in the early part of the 20th century. But actually, those periods of time, recessions especially, are times of great ingenuity. People come out of a recession with ideas, and I think the reason for that, especially in the business world, is the recession presents challenges for a business person especially. Still making a profit, still making payroll, and it causes their minds to think about, maybe I haven't been doing things the way I could be doing it because things are going along smoothly. Why change it? So if you look at the data, periods after recessions are times of great ingenuity and times of when we have a surge of small business starts. So I want to make that point firstly. Secondly, I think you're absolutely right. COVID has changed a lot. It's presented us with new challenges, but it's also presented us with ways of dealing with those challenges. And of course, a perfect example is the Zoom interaction, which is just a generic term, is you have meetings or you interact with people over the computer rather than face to face. When NC State closed classes when COVID started in 2020, we just switched all the in-person classes to online classes. Now NC State's had an online system for decades, and it's not unusual. It actually is usual for students to take some online classes as well as in-person classes, mix it up. So students were ready to do that, and faculty were ready to do that. And of course, we saw that carried over into the business world. So I think that's one of the things that's going to be carried through. We're hearing some battles between some companies and their employees who want to stay home and work, but I think that'll be worked out. But I think remote work is one of the lasting implications of COVID. It probably would have come, but it's now actually 3 times higher as a percent of the workforce than it was pre-COVID. I think other things like telemedicine. Telemedicine's been around, but it's been being perfected. My wife used telemedicine. I think we're going to see more use of telemedicine. I think things like drone delivery packages, I mentioned this before. So there are a lot of changing things that are going to change life, which is topic of my book, Relaunch. And then I think there are great positive implications, as I alluded to earlier, in rural areas. Think about a rural area versus an urban area. Housing prices are definitely lower because you got less competition. Density is lower. A lot of people like more elbow room, more density. Pollution's lower because you don't have all the cars driving around. And so we could have a future where a lot of our urban counties that have struggled actually find that the post-COVID economy is very positive for them, as you get people who are saying, hey, I can Zoom work. I want to live in beautiful Sampson County. My house price is half of what it would in Raleigh. I can still get to a doctor. I mean, I may have to physically go to a doctor sometime, but I can emergencies. I can do telemedicine. So I think the future is going to be very, very interesting, especially for rural North Carolina.
How has the whole generation of technology changed the way we do economic development and promote what our area is? You alluded to rural areas. North Carolina is about rural areas. A huge part of this state is rural areas. For folks that are out there that are in that business or looking at relocating or whatever, does economic developers need to kind of change the twist or look at a different way of promoting their particular area?
I think that it's helped economic developers in terms of information transfer can be much wider and deeper. In other words, developers can communicate to someone, let's just say in Indiana, who's thinking of moving their business or moving an outlet of the business in North Carolina. You can easily send photos of the site. You can send, I assume, videos that can actually be live almost, et cetera. I think that's certainly been relatively new. But I think in economic development, it still comes down to face-to-face contact. Eventually, our economic development recruiters in the state have to see face-to-face with the folks who want to locate here. They will come here. They still want to see the property. I think in real estate, especially if your economic development means you're going to build something, there's no substitute still for seeing it face to face. So I don't think economic development has changed that way. It's still going to be ultimately a face to face decision.
Where we're sitting now, we're in what I consider close or reasonable proximity to Raleigh. You live in Raleigh and Wade County. You've seen the expansion just in the past 5 years. The expectation is tremendous there. How will that affect what happens in Raleigh and Wade County? How will that affect Sampson, Bladen, Duplin, surrounding? It's already affecting Johnson County, but how will that affect us?
Well, the city of Raleigh itself is going through a phase where they are promoting higher density in the city in order to get more dwellings, in order to moderate housing prices. And a lot of people like that lifestyle. They like a lifestyle of living in a condo or a townhouse or maybe in a high-rise, but a lot of people don't. So I see a future where if urban areas continue to grow and especially increase density and traffic, et cetera, there will be people who say, I prefer a lower dense area. I prefer open space. I can work remotely, or if I'm retired, I don't need to work. So I actually think the contrast between urban areas and what that lifestyle offers and rural areas and lifestyle they offer is going to be sharper in the future and get sharper, which means that I think rural areas will be more attractive to more people who, for whatever reason, this is not a put down on the urban high density lifestyle, but for people who don't want that lifestyle and can move elsewhere, I think our great rural areas like Sampson County will benefit from that.
I think the idea of somewhat of a wide open space compared to the density of Raleigh is becoming more attractive. Also, does the numbers indicate we're seeing more people move to North Carolina, or has that been pretty static?
No, people are moving by leaps and bounds. Last year, as I said with my presentation to Sampson County Group, last year North Carolina was either 1 or 2, I just can't remember which ranking, in terms of the number of people in the country who are moving from another state to North Carolina. This has nothing to do with international migration. This is people in North Carolina, in the country, who are changing states. They're moving from New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, whatever, to North Carolina. North Carolina has been attracting people by leaps and bounds. I told the group that there's a comment or a phrase in economics: vote with your feet. If you don't like something, move. And we're seeing it in spades and have for decades in North Carolina. So it's one of the reasons why we're one of the fastest growing states in the country. Now, most of those folks are going to the urban areas because that's where oftentimes the finance jobs, the tech jobs, et cetera, the professional jobs are. And so that's going to continue to make those areas bigger, but more densely populated and all the issues that go with that. So again, my point is I think the contrast between urban areas, the lifestyle there, and the lifestyle that people can have in rural areas will be sharper, meaning that people who don't want that urban lifestyle and can move somewhere else will look more closely at rural areas like Sampson County.
When we look at what we do here in a large part of North Carolina, it's agriculture, some form of agriculture, either poultry, swine, melons, whatever is grown in these areas. Is there particular challenges that farmers and ag folks have to meet to keep up with the demand, not only of the United States, but the world?
Farming has always been challenging. As I told you, actually both of my grandfathers were farmers. One was a hog farmer in Ohio, and one was a cattle farmer. It's extremely hard work. It's extremely competitive. You're not competing just with a farm around the corner or a farm in Ohio with a farm in North Carolina. You're competing with farms in the world, in Europe, in Asia. So it's extremely competitive. Prices are very volatile, up but also down. The labor problem is now there, but that's been there for a long time. But we need to eat. And farming is extremely important in the North Carolina's economy. We're one of the top states in a number of the commodities. So farmers are extremely innovative. They have adapted a lot of technology to help improve their efficiency. So I think we are always going to have agriculture and farmers. It may be a different look. But it's always going to be here. It's going to be a part, I presume, of the Sampson County future. But I think the Sampson County future could also be bringing in firms, maybe in the tech area, maybe in the finance area, professional area, that can, again, have access due to high-speed internet. That's the key that rural areas need to get. They need to get reliable, high-speed internet. And you're working on that in Sampson County. But that's the key. Once you get reliable, high-speed internet, I think you will be attractive. Sampson County is going to be attractive to a much broader range of firms.
When we come back from this break, I want to try to get into that area, not only ag, but for individuals as a whole, but for ag business and others, what they should be looking at as they gear up for this 2023 and beyond thing. And a number of your books, you've talked a lot about these issues, how, kind of preparing for that. The significant jobs that are going to be, that are in demand now. And the community college system does a lot of stuff in that area, in jobs that, everything from electrical to plumbing, that kind of thing. And I think sometimes we forget that's the underlying part of their survival. So I'd like for you to kind of get your opinion on that, and also kind of talk about that, how that may affect somebody. I mean, I've got grandchildren now, and so I'm looking at doing different things, and I'm thinking, well, I couldn't suggest something right now because I don't know what it looks like. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're going to be back in a moment. We're talking with Dr. Michael Walden, Professor Emeritus, NC State, 43 years there, well known throughout the state of North Carolina. Stay tuned. Call a friend.
Just because something may work doesn't mean it's right for your business. Let Star Communications' knowledgeable consultants help you customize a hosted voice system that's right for you. Our dedicated experts work with you to understand your business needs and guide you at every step, from choosing and installing services to ongoing maintenance and support. Contact Star today.
Eastern North Carolina is a beautiful place where we gladly choose to call home, and we strive to provide the best communications services. STAR is committed to improving communications to all our service areas because we want to improve the communities where we not only work, but also live. STAR Communications. We are neighbors serving neighbors.
If you run a business, you need sales. To get sales, you need customers. To get customers, you need exposure. Let our team of experts craft and produce the perfect video ad to reach your intended audience while making the most of your advertising dollars. Call 1-800-706-6538 or visit starcom.net to contact our Star Communications production team and get your business moving to the next level.
Folks, welcome back. We Should Know's on there. JW Simmons, your host. As you know, we've been talking with Dr. Michael Walden today. Dr. Walden, it's kind of hard to get everything in that we want to get in, and it sounds like we have a lot of time when we're talking about 50 minutes here, but there's so much content. And in fact, with all the books, and a couple of them I've read, and all the material I wanted to cover, I've probably got less than 10%. This last segment, I don't want to exclude anything you want to cover, but there's a couple of areas I want to speak to, or have you speak to rather, is a whole area of employability in the trades world. As you know, we've got an excellent community college system here in the state, 58 community colleges. As far as I know, all of them are focused on trades, everything from building to wiring to plumbing, carpentry, you name it. Is that something that is too labor intensive for folks to look at, or why do we seem to not have enough people that want to get into some of these trade-specific jobs?
Well, I think there are two reasons. One is that they are very physically demanding. So just like I was talking about working on a farm, I think part of the reason why people have moved away from that, younger people, it's just hard physically. My father was a carpenter for all his life. He never used a nail gun, nailed everything. He got to about 62 and he just couldn't do it. He had to retire because he just physically couldn't do it. So that's part of it, that they're physically hard jobs and people look for other jobs. Secondly, I think we've gotten into an attitude over the last several decades that if you don't go to four-year colleges, you're not smart. And that's crazy. That's my father was a high school dropout. He's the smartest man I knew. We have to respect every job. I respect every job, and we have to have a culture that respects every job. And I think therefore we have to. I think a good idea would be to start to reintroduce technical jobs or craft jobs at the high school level. When I was growing up in Ohio, in southwestern Ohio, Cincinnati area, when it came time for me to go to high school, one of the discussions my parents had to have is, are we going to send him to, I'll call it the regular academic high school, or we're going to send him to the technical high school? Because there were two kinds of high schools at that time. This is in the 50s and 60s. There were two kinds of high schools. That's sort of gone away. So I would like to see at the high school level the reintroduction to students that there are these options in lots of fields, but including the craft jobs that you talked about, that are honorable jobs that often pay very good money,
trade and industry jobs,
six-digit money, and that you are smart with your hands. You may not be able to quote Shakespeare, but you are smart with your hands. That's intelligence. You can figure out problems. So I think we need to do more, and I think we are going to have to, because not only are you talking about shortages in those kinds of electricians, carpenters, mechanics, etc., but we're going to have, I think, a big shift even in other areas in terms of what the skills are going to be needed with technology increasingly coming in. So I think we have to expand our offerings to not only young people, but to middle-aged people who may find that what they've been doing for 20 years is no longer needed. They got to get a different skill. And we need to make it easy for them to do that. We need to make it to the point and short. And also, in some cases, they may have to relocate. We may have to help with that, too. When I say we mean the state.
Transitional thinking.
Yes.
The other thing I wanted to touch on is we've all, when we go to the grocery store, and you've talked before in a number of articles and so forth about the supply chain and that kind of thing, but we start seeing products and commodities going up in price, sometimes radically. Sometimes the content goes down and the price still goes up. And we question that. I was in a conversation, I told you just a while ago when we were just talking off air, but I'm constantly talking with people, and I had a gentleman look at me and go, well, this is simple. He said, if a company is demanding that if a company has to pay employees $20 an hour instead of $15 or whatever it may be, they're going to adjust their bottom line, and ultimately that product or whatever it is, a commodity or service, is going to go up proportionally, and ultimately the comment was made, is that then society as a whole ends up paying the difference. So the point he was making is that if government says you got to pay now $15 an hour as opposed to 10 or 12 or 7, then it's going to be adjusted and you are going to have to end up paying the difference. Is that oversimplification?
No, I think we have regulations on businesses for lots of things. There is a minimum wage, for example. We increasingly have environmental regulations, some of them now related to climate. We have safety regulations, and certainly some of those are clearly needed. But I think we always have to remember, businesses are going to, if the regulation costs them more, they're going to react by likely raising their prices to their customers, because most businesses operate on an exceedingly small margin. I think there's a mindset among some people that, if you make a profit, your business, or you make profit, you must be rolling in money. No, the average business profit for the edgy company in the nation is about 2 or 3%. That means the owner of the company or the corporation makes about 2 or 3%. And really, it's their return, it's what they get back for the investment they make. I have a good friend who operates pizza restaurants in Raleigh. He's got about 4 of them. He's Italian background, very good pizza. And when we talked about this, he said, "Oh yeah, people don't understand. I'm the last one paid." He said, "I'm the last one paid because I've got managers for my companies, I've got employees, but if I don't make a profit, I'm the one that suffers. So that's my return." So I think we have to be very careful in balancing business viability and its impact on their customers against more regulations.
And I think that comment also suits farmers. When you look at farmers, they have to do the same thing. And I was going to mention also, I read that Steve Troxter, Commissioner of Agriculture, had dubbed you as an ambassador for agriculture in North Carolina. That's quite a title, but we're looking at what? Close to $1 billion.
Close to $100 billion.
Close to $100 billion industry in North Carolina.
The entire farm, processing,
forestry, everything.
Yeah, $100 billion industry.
And I think when you look at that, we have to ask ourselves, if we don't get that right, if we don't allow our farmers to have the ability to at least be successful, none of the rest of this is going to work.
Yeah. Now, I certainly understand that there have been long-term issues, environmental quality issues, waste management, et cetera, with farms. And I certainly get that, and that needs to be addressed, and I think it has been. But we always have to keep in mind, farmers don't want to damage the environment willingly. They live there. They live there. So we have to be careful in balancing, making sure that regulations are friendly to the farmer, as well as friendly to whatever objective is being met. Because if we put farmers out of business, or if we raise prices so much that you and I as consumers of food have to cut back, obviously there are losses there.
In a number of your books, and the way they're written, I encourage people to take a look, because they're relatively easy to read. It's not really complicated, detailed stuff.
My wife actually reads it.
Yeah. Well, and it's important, because these kinds of things that we've been talking about today is things that tend to divide us, because it's lack of understanding.
Right.
And that kind of tribalism and what I call is hitting somebody on the head with a stick mentality is just dangerous.
That's a very good. And I want to say my wife's extremely intelligent. She's not an economist, but I just say that
we're going to try to get.
I write it so that she even understands. I think you hit upon a good point, because we're in a culture where everything is combative. Everything gets it seems like it's on the edges. When I've been in meetings with groups that are on different sides of an issue, and you get the people in a room where there are no cameras, there's no newspaper people, and they're just talking. Totally different. My experience has been totally different. Most people are cordial. They're willing to understand others' point of view, and oftentimes a solution, at least my experience in the kind of meetings I've been in, and a solution will be ironed out. So I think with our constant 24-hour news cycle and almost our gotcha culture, where we want to find some scandal and get you, I think that's actually hurting productive decision making.
Too much sensationalism and not enough realism.
Yeah.
We've come up to close here, and I'm going to give you about 60 seconds. Anything you want to touch on that we've missed, and there's a lot of stuff we've missed, and also invite you back, maybe get into more detail on some topics.
Well, clearly the economy right now is on a lot of people's minds, and I do think 2023 is going to be challenging. So what I would tell people in businesses, have a plan. If the worst happens, plan for the worst. Praise if it's better, then be happy. So if your business or household, have a budget, know where you can cut back, have a plan if your income is going down. Secondly, though, I think the future is bright. I think particularly here in North Carolina, I think we got things we want to work on. And I think education is top. Workforce skills, I think we need to think about making sure we've got the apparatus there so that people can change careers. But I think this is an absolutely fabulous state, and I see great things happening, both to people living in urban areas as well as in rural areas.
And I think the other thing that you mentioned in one of your books too is there's this whole idea about the system itself, and I think Dr. W. Edwards Deming talked about that years ago, and looking at quality management, that whole systemic approach to things, and when that system is interfered with, it affects everybody. Yeah. Especially in a negative way.
Sure. So, again, I'm a positive person, and I don't just make these things up. I think we still have a positive future ahead of us. It'll be a different future. And also, I think the thing that stresses, people want different things. So there are going to be people who want to live in a bustling city and live in a 30-story high-rise. There are going to be people who want to live in an area that's quieter, more open space, lower housing costs. So that means people sort themselves out in terms of what they like. And I think the kind of technology, like with remote work, that's coming is going to permit that more. So I think I'm very excited about that.
Exciting future, and thank you for being with us.
My pleasure, Jim.
Taking time. We look forward to having you again, and hopefully we can get more detail on some of these things. But again, we've covered a lot of stuff today. Encourage people to look at your books, look at a number of articles. Just go online and you can Google Dr. Michael Walden, and there's just a proliferation of information out there. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us today. We look forward to seeing you again right here on We Should Know. And as always, as we close, we look at you and say, may God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host JW Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.